Welcome to the Robertson and Easterling podcast. Thanks for listening. I'm Craig Robertson.
And I'm Matt Easterling. Craig and I are board-certified family law specialists, but more simply, we're professional storytellers. Together, we run one of the most successful boutique law firms in Mississippi.
As divorce lawyers, we are creative problem solvers who work with real people during the most difficult seasons of their lives. So sit back, relax, take a deep breath. Everything's going to be okay. You found us, and what you're about to hear is going to help. All right, so our guest today is my good friend, Matt. Matt is around 40 years old, has been married around 20 years. He has 2 teenage children, and he's a small business owner. Had spent about 10 or 15 years in the corporate world and found himself in a place where he needed to come and seek some legal help. And so, Matt, thanks for taking time with us today to talk about this.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited about this opportunity to just share my story, my experience, and hope that somebody can glean something from it.
So let's just dive right in. And what was going on in your life that led you to reach out to us for legal help?
My life was in the middle of chaos and crisis. My wife and I were working through counseling and going through just the steps, and for me, unfortunately, the motions of trying to repair our marriage that I had destroyed, honestly. I had an inappropriate relationship with another woman and was able to come clean about that relationship about, I would say, 6 months before I came to see you guys, and tried to do what I could do to end that relationship, and then also try to repair mine. What I found was that I did not believe that reconciliation was possible. My wife actually forgave me and said that she wanted to work on our marriage. And the crazy thing was I just couldn't believe that was something that could happen.
If that happened, that is the discovery of an inappropriate relationship 6 months before you ever landed in our office. Why did you wait? Why did it take 6 months to come in and get legal help? What changed that inspired you? Okay, look, I need to go in and talk about what's going on to a lawyer.
Yeah, I think what happened was I was giving it the old college try. I mean, I was trying to work it out, or at least I thought I was. And we were going to counseling, like I said, and things were good, and then things were bad, and it just kept going back and forth. For me, and what it was an inability to get both feet in, and for me to really be committed to that relationship. And it finally came to a head one day in counseling, and I told her, I said, go get an attorney. This is not working. And she was upset, and I wound up actually moving out of my house. So I moved into a little crappy apartment about 15 minutes from my home, and now I've got 2 children and a wife that are desperate for me to come home and figure it all out. And I'm out just running wide open away from all that because I'm so scared. And I'm laying in bed in this, again, crappy apartment going, this is terrible. And I need to do something. I'm also very fearful at that time that, I'm not gonna be able to see my kids. And I've got the wrong people talking to me, telling me that, you need to protect yourself. You need to make sure that, she doesn't get everything or whatever. And I just wanted out, honestly. I just wanted to run away from the problem, which unfortunately was me. So I was running with it.
Do you recall how long you had been wrestling with the idea of calling an attorney or coming in and seeing somebody before you actually did?
Yeah, I would think it was probably about a year. Honestly,
oh,
yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it was so even before discovery. I'm in the middle of my affair, and I'm contemplating how to get out of my marriage and go be with a fair partner, or go be single because I've created this monster in my mind that is my wife. I mean, honestly, just from having the inappropriate relationship and then measuring what is ultimately a fantasy world and measuring my wife by that fantasy world, I began to just resent her like crazy and resent her for no reason. She's an incredible lady. But yeah, I mean, over a year probably of just thinking about it, but never ever really getting serious about it. Just kind of living in that fantasy world.
Let's talk a little bit about the day you actually came in, because I remember the day that you came in. I can remember specifically there's some images that I talk to clients about and I've been using for 20 years now. One is the image of two mountains, and that a person who comes to see me is at base camp, is what I would like to say. And they have two peaks they can either try to ascend. And one is the peak of reconciliation, and one is the peak of the divorce. Two equally difficult journeys. One leads to restoration. One leads to a new life that for some people is the right decision. So I remember talking to you about that specifically. And I also remember another picture that I drew about, there's a common misconception that half of marriages fail. That's not actually true. Well, it is true, but it's not half of first marriages. Actually, most first marriages work out. It is the second and third and fourth marriages that have a higher failure rate, and that's basically because there's more people involved. I draw the little picture that, so your world was you and your wife and your two children. But if you divorce and you add a new spouse who may or may not have an ex, who may or may not have children, and just basically if you start drawing the little stick figures, there's just way more people to get along and to create difficulty, because look, managing children, managing finances, managing work, all that is hard, and the more people that are involved in it can add to the difficulty. So let's talk specifically about, before you walked in the door, how did you feel? What do you remember about that first interaction with me and Matt Easterling?
So I've always known what you've done for a living, and I knew that you were going to be available if I needed you. And when I was walking in that day, I was pretty desperate with the thought of, there's a possibility I might not be able to see my kids. There's a possibility I might not be able to afford to live so that I can make sure that my kids are okay. And I wanted to come in and just get an idea of, hey, I've got this fantasy and I've got a lot of stories in my head, but what does divorce really look like? And that was something that you and Matt did wonderfully. And yeah, those two pictures were very helpful, is to paint. You guys painted a clear picture of what divorce would look like, and help me make a more informed decision about, hey, what am I running to? And the picture of the mountains, yeah, that one was impactful, but not as impactful as the picture of the multiple families. That was a big deal. I remember you saying, hey, right now you've got 4 people to worry about, and then if divorce comes along, you could potentially have 8. Let's add another second marriage to another one, and then you've got 10. I mean, who knows how many families you're going to have to try to keep happy. And the road home looked like the road that I wanted to travel, the mountain that I wanted to climb. And I guess, I was saying earlier that fear was what ultimately drove me out of my house, but then there was a greater fear of what's on the other side. That grass looked really, really scary, honestly, on the other side of the fence.
So what did you do? So you came, you got information. I remember, quite frankly, you were harder on yourself about what your future would look like upon divorce than probably the legal reality was. But notwithstanding that reassurance, I believe, from me and Matt about what your future could look like upon divorce, you chose reconciliation and moving toward reconciliation anyway. Talk about that a little bit, about what you walk out of our office. You've been, what I'd like to say, armed with information. You've got a more realistic legal picture of what your future could be like as a divorced person. What happened then?
Yeah, so you guys painted a realistic financial picture for me. I think a lot of people probably on the way out, especially when you may be the perpetrator, so to speak, you just want out and you want to leave everything behind and you just want to escape. And I remember coming in here going, just give her everything. And you guys going, well, it's not going to be just like that. That's not exactly how the law works. And then having that reality of, well, wait a minute. Yeah, so if I can't leave everything behind, who am I hurting? I'm hurting my kids. I'm about to take dad out of the house, but then I'm about to say, hey, and oh, by the way, you can't even live in that house anymore because you're not going to be able to afford it because I'm taking half of everything. And it was a picture of destruction that I had already created enough damage. This was going to be the final blow that would just destroy my family as it was.
Right. So what I'm hearing you say is I think there's a common misconception about people who are the one at fault in the marriage.
Right.
Or the one more at fault in a marriage, because I don't think there's any marriage whereby neither party has some level of responsibility, because we're all broken. We all make mistakes. We're all less than perfect. But in your case, what I'm hearing you say is I almost felt guilty about the law not punishing me as much as I thought the law should, because there was a lot of shame around your mistakes, a lot of self-persecution, if you will, around your mistakes.
Definitely. So shame was driving this bus for me. It was putting me to bed at night and waking me up every morning, and it was dictating all of my decisions. I was so ashamed of what I'd done. I was so ashamed of what I'd done to my family and having that inappropriate relationship. And I just wanted to go hide, man. I just wanted to run away and hide. And yeah, so what that looked like for me was, hey kids, don't worry. Everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be like normal. I'm just going to take myself out of the picture. And that just wasn't reality.
Did the consultation process, did it end up being like you expected it would be? Was it easier, harder, scarier, more comforting than you thought? What?
Yeah, I would say, if you want to say easier, probably, just it was a clear cut, this is what you guys do, you know how it works. And you laid it out for me what I thought was very clear. So going back, it helped me make a real informed decision. And you guys were easy to talk to. Craig's illustrations, which is, helping me visualize what the family dynamic would look like, helping me visualize the mountains that I'm about to try to climb either way. And, the road home it looked like the easier road, or at least it was the more worthy road. How about that? Not the easier, because it's been very difficult. We're actually 2 years removed right now from having that conversation with you guys.
Talk about that road home. What did it look like for you? So you walk out of our office. What happened then?
I walk out of the office and I'm just, there's no way that I'm going forward with divorce. I can't do it. I can't do it to my kids. My parents are divorced. My parents have been divorced since I was 4. I remember what it's like to bounce back and forth to houses. I remember what it's like to have 2 Christmases and 2 birthdays, and to try to keep those 2 households happy. That was something that was really, really impactful to me again. And so I leave here going, I'm not doing that to my kids. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know how I'm going to fix this, but I need help. And the help started here with the reality check. And then from there, it was, I went home, had a conversation with my wife and just said, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I don't know how to make this happen, but I need to do something. And she said, well, maybe you need to go somewhere. Maybe you need to go up to a place where you can spend some time and get away. And that landed me at the ranch in Tennessee.
Talk about that. What's the ranch, and how did you end up? What was the process for going? How did you step away from your life for the period of time necessary to go? And, what impact has it had on you today here, 2 years removed from being there?
The ranch was the best thing that I've ever done for myself in my entire life. 28 days of being away from everything else and just focusing on me and having people pour into me and having people talk to me and speak truth into me. It was an environment that was so healing. So the ranch is a a mental health and addiction facility that takes care of people who are struggling with heroin to sex addiction. I mean, it's the whole gamut. And then people who are just depressed or who have eating disorders. It doesn't matter. I mean, the crazy thing that I learned while I was at the ranch is that all of that comes back to a core, which is the person, this image of self. We medicate with drugs because of how we feel about ourselves. We don't eat and starve ourselves because of how we feel about ourselves. And the truth is that my inappropriate relationship and my destructive behavior had everything to do with how I felt about myself and my desire to have someone else or something else make me feel better. So crazy enough, I'm in a place with heroin addicts and guys who have, almost died, and alcoholics, and within 3 days of being in a place like that, it's pretty scary at first. But then all of a sudden you look around and go, that guy's me, that guy right there's me, and they just have a different vice or a different way of escaping the reality that they can't stand to look at anymore.
Yeah, you're not an expert on this subject, but I'm interested, and I think our listeners would be interested in your feedback on it, because I think there is specifically in the church, that sexual sin or sexual brokenness gets categorized as addiction. So, and in some cases that's certainly true. There certainly is, although it's not in the fancy psychologist book called the DSM-4 or DSM-5 now.
Right.
Most experts would agree that there is sexual addiction and it does exist, but some other people would say, well, that's just an excuse to look at porn or to have affairs or anything,
Right.
something like that. So what have you learned about sexual addiction specifically, if anything?
I mean, if anybody has experienced the first kiss or the first time you ever made love, or then you can't tell me there wasn't some kind of physical response, or that would rival any drug that's out there. So the desire to have that feeling over and over again, that sounds like addiction to me.
It's funny that you say that. There's a counselor for a few years. I had an office over in Meridian, Mississippi, and there was a counselor over there. She was a lay counselor, but she was a lovely human being. And she would tell me, say, Craig, the strongest drug known to man is strange nookie.
Yeah, it's a pretty powerful drug, I'll tell you. But there's a much more powerful drug out there, and that's acceptance and grace, man. It's an incredible feeling when you can finally accept who you are, and then have other people and believe that they accept you, which was what I've experienced. So, you mentioned the Christian world and this idea of addictions and things like that. What was unique and great about being at the ranch was there were no believers there. Like,
I was going to ask you that. I didn't know if the ranch was a faith-based facility or not, or how faith. And a lot of times we, as believers, we can see God in, places where other people don't. One of my favorite books is, and I recommend it to a lot of my clients, it's called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And it's a real cool book about rediscovering creativity. And I don't think the word God is in it. Yeah. But you cannot read it without getting a sense of the creator God and the higher power.
Hey guys, I'm your new friend Cassie. I'm a paralegal and the client care coordinator at Robertson and Easterling. Are things not working out for you at home? I am so sorry. What you need right now is honest feedback and wise counsel about how the legal system works in Mississippi and how it could impact your future. Click on the link on our website or just give me a call. After a meeting with one of our attorneys, you'll feel like the weight of the world has been lifted from your shoulders, and you'll have guidance about what you need to do next. When you're ready to talk, just give me a call. I would love to talk to you. The fact that you even spoke to me is totally confidential. Until then, take care and enjoy the second half of our show.
So there were no believers there.
No, there weren't. But the big book was there. The 12-step book was there, and it talks about that higher power. and everybody was okay with that higher power. The piece for me, though, about the believers and not being there was that these people were loving on me, caring for me, and they weren't reading a book that told them that they should. There's a lot of times you'll get some love from believers or Christians or whatever you want to call them, and it's like, wow, well, that you're supposed to. You're loving me because you're supposed to.
Right, out of obligation.
Absolutely. So and when someone like myself who was really struggling with this idea of loving myself and believing that anyone else could possibly love me, to go to that environment where they did and where they truly cared and nurtured my spirit, it was nice. We took down all the walls of potential, well, that's your job, or this is why you do it. The people who served me the most while I was at the ranch were the other patients, were the other guys that were struggling.
So what I've heard your story, at least this piece of your story, you came in, divorce is not for me. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do my best to climb the mountain of reconciliation to continue along that analogy. Your wife looks at you and like, well, look, dude, we've done all we can do here, so why don't you go try to find a place? You did. You went. And you said it was a concentrated 30-day period of time where you were working on yourself, that it's the biggest thing that you've ever done for yourself and your own personal healing and growth. Sure. So what was your biggest takeaway?
My biggest takeaway was that I was lovable, and not lovable because of what I do for someone or to someone. I was just lovable, period. And then I was able to start loving myself. And then I was able to believe that someone else could love me. While I was at the ranch, my wife, she had a conversation with a fair partner and learned about everything. And we can only make phone calls once every 3 days or 2 days, and for like 20 minutes. So one of the first phone calls was, I know everything. And then I've got not a prison guard, but one of the guys there going, all right, it's time to get off the phone. So hang up the phone and have to live with, oh crap, she knows everything. And that was a wonderful thing that needed to happen to me, because then I was fully known. I could hide nothing at that point. And by hiding or by being fully known and then still being accepted at that point, then yeah, there's no denying, you know all of my junk. You know everything there is to know about me. It's on the table and you're still okay with me? Wow. And that's what I came home to. I came home to a wife who knew it all and was willing to continue to work. And that was probably that 6-month time from disclosure to the time I came to see you guys. That never happened. There were more secrets that existed. There were more, gosh, if she knew this, then she wouldn't be sitting on this therapist couch with me. Or gosh, if she knew this, we wouldn't be talking right now. So when she did that, it was wow. Now you get home and it's hard. I mean, that's really where the work began, because at the ranch, you're still just there following somebody else's instructions, but you come home and you face the people that you have hurt. And for me, that was the hardest part, was coming home and seeing that. But then it was also the most rewarding and beautiful part about it was being home and saying, here I am, and I've got nothing to lose, because it was all gone anyway. And it's been a beautiful, difficult road to redemption. But my wife and I, and if she was in here, she'd tell you, we have the best relationship, and it's better than it's ever been. In 20 years of marriage, 25 years of knowing each other, we really know each other, and we really love each other. Man, that's a beautiful, beautiful story. I do want to talk around one piece. I've got tons of counselor friends. It's just kind of like, I guess I run in those circles, but I hear them say, you're only as sick as your secrets. Absolutely.
And that set you free. But I think a lot of people, men and women, are afraid that those secrets, that those things shared in counseling, those things shared in vulnerable moments will be weaponized against them. And I think that's certainly the fear of vulnerability. I'm a Enneagram geek, and so I'm an 8 on the Enneagram, and I'm a challenger, and I'm vulnerability challenged. That's great for your divorce lawyer, not so great for your husband or father. But I'm growing like everybody else. And, that's a hard place, that vulnerability, which creates the connection that's necessary for a truly rewarding, sustainable relationship. Because a lot of people stay married, but they're freaking miserable. And we don't promote divorce, we promote helping people where they are. Mm-hmm. And I think you're a testimony to that. You came in and we analyzed where you are. And you took that information and went and made a beautiful redemptive story. But talk around that piece a little bit, that weaponizing of vulnerability, if you will.
It sounds easy. It sounds beautiful. But it's very hard, and I don't think I would have done it if I wasn't forced to do it. There's just something about sharing. You're right. You're as sick as those secrets, and I was trickling them out a little bit at a time, and she was accepting a little bit at a time, which was just, gosh, it was just wounding her over and over again. I feel so horrible for that, but. Yeah, if she didn't have that conversation with a fair partner while I was at the ranch, I don't know at that time. I mean, today wow, I'm so free. But at that time, I don't know if I'm just openly going to say, here's everything. I need you to know everything. So yeah, vulnerability, it is the most free and beautiful way to live, and being fully known and accepted is amazing. But yeah, it's hard. I don't know too many people who are willing to do it.
Is there a particular moment that you can reflect on over the last 2 years while you've been on this reconciliation journey that is particularly memorable, where you looked over at your wife and said, gosh, I'm glad we didn't miss this?
Oh, man, there's plenty of them. But I guess the one that sticks out the most is we were fortunate enough to have my daughter. She got a big accolade at her school, and we're there, and it was just this beautiful family moment for all of us. And yeah, she and I are watching her celebrate and with all of her friends and her community, and we just look at each other and go, this wouldn't be like this. We would be on opposite sides of this room right now if we didn't put in the work. And God, thank you for putting in the work with me. Thank you for being here with me. This could look really different, and it doesn't. It was a really beautiful moment for us, man, and that was that moment you're talking about.
Yeah, that's really cool. One thing, we're almost out of time, and I want to hear from my law partner over here as well on a couple of his closing thoughts. But one piece that I wanted to talk with you a little bit about, and you mentioned it, was your experience as a child or an adult now whose parents were divorced. Talk around that just a little bit. What was your experience? I know your parents were divorced when you were really little, and so it's kind of all you've ever known. Talk about that.
Yeah. So, 4 years old, I don't have a memory of my parents ever being together unless they were in the same room fighting over something to do with me. And that's just not a good place to be for a kid, because that kid begins to believe that I am the cause of pain, I am the problem. And I began to manage, and forgive me for using recovery words, but I began to manage all the people around me. I began to just, hey, I can make this person happy, I can make this person happy, I can hide these feelings, and I started to hide, and that hiding behavior began real early, and I got really good at it. If you go to mom's house and experience something good, then when you come home to dad, you can't tell him about it because it might hurt his feelings, because you don't want him to know that you could be happy somewhere else. And the same thing when you had a good time at dad's house and then you go to mom. And so it was just an environment that looked good from the outside. Man, everybody around me, I remember I experienced a lot of love from a lot of people besides my parents. They were always, hey, it's okay. You're going to, and really what was happening to me was, I wasn't able to trust my feelings. I don't think I was able to really be sad, to have that sad moment where, like, I am sad. My parents are divorced. it's okay. This happens to lots of kids. This is, you got 2 Christmases, you get 2 birthdays, you get 2 everything. And that's not where a kid wants to be. I'll take 1 Christmas. That's plenty. So that environment for me was, it was damaging. I didn't realize how bad it was. And I'm not mad at them for that, but you just can't deny the damage that comes from divorce.
Yeah. So divorce obviously happens. So my last thought, what advice would you give as an adult child of divorced people, as someone who is at base camp, if you will, but chose the path of reconciliation? What do you tell parents who are recently divorced or contemplating divorce as it relates to their children?
I would say that never forget that your ex is that child's parent, and you are that child's parent. And it's really, really hard for a child to hear something negative about their parent. And just be really careful about what you say about them. And then remember that it's okay to be sad, and give them space to be sad, because it's a sad time. It's not a joyous occasion for little people who are experiencing a complete world change.
So if I'm hearing you right, you didn't feel like sugarcoating it was helpful. The whole thing about the 2 Christmases
No
and
way.
trying to, I feel like I've been doing this a long time now, and I've never actually heard that perspective on it. And that is really resonating with me at the moment.
We hear that all the time. Children are resilient, and they are.
Yeah.
And, and most kids are okay. But at the same time, our identity is created in part by our mom and our dad. And you can't deny that I'm a reflection of my father to a certain degree, and I am a reflection of my mother to a certain degree. So if somebody's telling me that my mom is bad, or she's a drunk or a drug addict or crazy, I can't help but internalize that as being
A part of me is bad.
a reflection of me.
Absolutely. I mean, that the same mouth that says, I hate your father, also says, you're just like your father.
Right.
And that goes, well, then you must hate me.
Yeah. And no child should ever have to feel like they need permission to love their both parents, to love them equally, and, to take that out on your child because they do what comes most naturally in the world, which is love both of their parents.
Sure.
Is it's one of the worst things that I feel like I see in this world. I wish I knew how to completely fix it.
Yeah, I know custody cases are necessary, and but I'll tell you, having done them now for 20 years, I certainly leave a little bit of my soul in the courtroom, and sometimes they're just flat necessary. Sometimes you have to do it because you can justify. Well, look, I'm not going to pay $10,000 to save $5,000. That doesn't make any sense. But can I justify spending $10,000 to make sure that my child is safe? I mean, oh yeah, absolutely. And so I think that is the most complicated piece about what we do. And the childhood is such a fleeting time. I mean, my kids are teenagers now, and I mean, dude, there's not much good about Facebook, but one thing good about Facebook is it'll show you those flashbacks, like, here's what you were doing 7 years ago. And I'm like, holy cow. I mean, I don't even hardly recognize them. So with those thoughts, what else do you have for us today?
Well, you mentioned that children are resilient. And I would say, yes, children are resilient. But I think children are survivors. And, one of the survival mechanisms or behaviors is to comfort yourself. And I think that can take you through the rest of your life when you find inappropriate coping mechanisms to comfort yourself or outlets to comfort yourself. And I think, so yeah, they're resilient, but wow, careful. They're survivors, but wow, careful. And, just love them and just know that they're being impacted as well.
Well, dude, thank you for sharing with us, for being so vulnerable, for just being so real, because I think that our listeners, that's what they want, is real. I mean, I try to tell people, I try to analyze things from all the way around, and some aspects of family law are just ugly, and thank you for showing the redemptive piece of that. I think we all want a story of redemption, and sometimes that looks like reconciliation, and sometimes that looks like, taking the broken pieces of our life and piecing it back together to create this beautiful work of art, a mosaic, if you will. So thank you for sharing your mosaic with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Yeah, my wife and I, we have a new marriage. So yeah, you're right. It was broken, and now it's a new marriage for us, and it's beautiful. I'm grateful.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Robertson and Easterling podcast. Thanks for spending time with us.
We'd love to hear from you if you need our help. You can request a consultation from our website in less than 5 minutes. If you liked our show, please subscribe to our podcast so you'll be one of the first to know when our next episode drops.
Have a great rest of your day, and remember, there's nothing wrong with arming yourself with information. On behalf of Matt and our entire team, thanks for listening. This podcast is not a substitute for an attorney. All information is provided as a general reference and public service. Listening to this podcast does not create a professional relationship with Robertson and Easterling or any of its attorneys or guests. This podcast may be considered advertising under applicable rules, and therefore free background information is available upon request. For a full disclaimer, please visit our website, www.robertson.ms.